Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the NRNRC Black Table Talk podcast. I'm here today with none other than Mr. Gilbert, and I'm going to give him a second to introduce himself. But I am your host, Mr. Sellers, and let's get into it. So, Mr. Gilbert, thank you for stopping in today. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Thank you. I first want to thank you for this opportunity to be on the Black Table Talk podcast,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate the work that you guys do and stand for. I am Reverend George Gilbert. I am a minister at the Holy Trinity United Baptist Church in Northeast DC, Deanwood area, east of the river. I'm also the executive director of the Center for Racial Equity and Justice, and we really just try to commit to serving the least, the lost, and the left out of our city, of our and our nation.
Awesome. I think very well said, and thank you for the work that you're doing in the community. So, when we talk, let's put some legs to this table, right? When we're talking about marginalized communities, specifically the reentry population, how do you define them, and what has either your work or what has your knowledge have you gained about what that looks like in that particular minority group?
So, how I got introduced to doing work with reentry was that I was fighting for jobs in our community. Some may know that DC has one of the highest unemployment rates in our city. We are a city that has the haves and the have-nots. We are a city that doesn't have a white poor population. We are a city that you see big, pretty buildings on one side of the city, beautiful parks on one side of the city, and on the other side, you would think it would be a third world country. And so, one of the issues that we've always believed that if we deal with the economics, then we deal with health, we deal with crime, we deal with all of the atrocities that are pulling our communities down. And so, we're fighting to organize and advocating to organize for jobs in our communities, and we focused on construction companies. And so, while we were focusing on construction companies, we went out into the community and we started to ask brothers and sisters two questions, and that was, one, do you want to work? The second question we asked, how much time do you spend trying to find a job, or how much time do you spend on a video game or at home watching TV? And once we got those answers and we got their attention, then we started to say, can you give us 4 hours a week? And all those 4 hours a week was 2 hours to come and let's talk, and then the other 2 hours were to come and let's strategize and go to the council and talk to the council members, or go to construction sites and apply for jobs, or go to construction sites and protest. Once we started doing that, we started to see that many of the brothers that were advocating for themselves and fighting for themselves were returning citizens, and we started to talk to them and realize the issues that they were dealing with. So I don't find myself as a guru or a professional in this area. I just care.
Yep.
And so, and then the last part of that is we had the opportunity to start a youth ministry in the youth jail of our city, and in both the New Beginnings, which is in Laurel, Maryland, but it's owned by DC DYRS, and then also at the YSC here at Mount Olivet Road. And so we are not far away from the pain. We're right inside of the pain.
Wow. I mean, just listening to all that you described in your advocacy, and how you're providing inroads and pathways for a public health issue around harm associated with the lack of unemployment for a marginalized community like returning citizens. I thought it was interesting, especially when you talked about involving returning citizens or justice impacted individuals in their process with those two questions. And so I wanted to kind of springboard or go a little bit, back or into a little bit in depth. How important it to build relationships with people that we sometimes have a propensity to say there's a need, there's a want that's going unmet, but there has to be a relationship being built into that if there's going to be real change in a community, right? We can't just go in and say you don't have the answers, I have the answers. And so the fact that questioning and that sensitivity around that is important. Can you talk a little bit more about why that is the model?
Well, one of the things that I always say is folks just don't want to hear a sermon; they want to see a sermon. And so, what we try to do is live an exampled life where folks can draw to you because they're not seeing fakeness or they're not seeing someone who doesn't understand their plight. And so a lot of times most of the time I never ask why someone did time or are doing time or are on probation, right? I care about that person in the wholeness or the lack of wholeness in which they're in whatever state they're in. And so we address seeing them fully as the person they are and not the person they was, not the person they're trying to fight from, but who they are. Because truth be told, we all have some demons that are inside of us that we are fighting, that's been with us for a lifetime. And so I see myself in them, number one. Number two, I believe that listening is important. And so we've heard the stories of men coming home and can't pay for a haircut, and they feel less than a man because they may have to get the money from their mother or from their significant other just to get a haircut, or they want to look a certain kind of way and feel a certain kind of way, And so when we hear those stories, we see the bigger picture. When a person comes home, they want to feel valued, and so we try to make them feel valued. Number one, by listening, and we are always real with them. We can't fix everything. We can't. We're not here to be a social service entity, but we're here to help you to advocate and learn how to advocate for yourself. And the weight that our company, our organization has, or our names have, can help you get into the door with a council member McDuffie, help you get into the door with a mayor, to help you get into the door with businessmen that may give you a chance. We were able, through our efforts before the pandemic, to get folks lawsuits because these construction companies were not hiring African Americans in our city. And what we did every Tuesday, we took at least 30 individuals to apply at the same construction site for over 6 months. And not one were called or interviewed, and we documented it. And then we were able to take it to the Office of Human Rights. They didn't want to look at it. Then we were able to take it to the feds, and they were able to get lawsuits from that. I didn't receive a dime, but the people were able to receive money. And what I learned, I started to see these same folk in the city, and they were telling me because of what we did, they took that model and they started getting lawsuits other places. So what they learned was how to advocate for themselves.
I love to hear it, Mr. Gilbert. And I'm sitting there thinking like that's awesome, but it's also what I heard you saying is that reconciling relationships, right, with employers has to be a part of the conversation. And the way in which you went about it scientifically, right, to involve the justice impacted individual in their employment journey, but then not get discouraged just because you're faced with the truth of being discriminated against, right? It's not enough just to see the barrier, we got to get to the breakthrough. So that was eloquently said. And I just wanted to hear more about holding space for that reality, that truth, that in any part of a returning citizen's journey, there are going to be barriers, but it's how we navigate that process to stay encouraged in our advocacy to know that there's still light at the end of this tunnel. So,
Right.
what were some of the positives, or if you want to give like one story about a person that maybe have been impacted by learning that? Because it's not easy coming home and then needing to reintegrate and thinking that it's going to be, at the snap of a finger.
What I've learned um, just through, I can't explain it, but it's just life, is that when you make an investment, it returns. When you make an investment of not just hard work, but putting the hard work into yourself. I was taught to plant your seeds where the rain is falling. So that means connect with someone who you see is blessed. Connect with someone who you see is going somewhere. We sometimes tend to fall in depression, fall into mental health, and we isolate. And what I always used to tell the men is that there's strength in numbers. There's strength in hearing someone else's story. So what we would do, we would have, I told you, 2 hours of talking, 2 hours of working. And so in those 2 hours of talking, I would bring young men or young women who had put the work in, and then they had gotten a job. They had gotten their first paycheck, and I would have them to come. And I wouldn't do the talking. I would have them to come to do testimonies of how it felt to get my first paycheck, how it felt to be able to give some money to my child, how it felt to be able to contribute to the household, to buy groceries for my mom. And so that gave those that attended the chance to hear what they could be. And so we had success stories. And I think it's almost spiritual how, and I'm a preacher, but the Bible says that we overcome by the word of our testimony. And so sometimes when people hear that I was able to get up and you can too, it gives you more strength, more confidence to know that I may be next in line. And so what we would tell folks is that if you want change, you got to work for it. And those changes started to happen. And we were able actually to create we edited the new first source law. First source law that Mayor Berry created was saying that 10% of all government contracts had to have DC resident workers. Well, what was happening was companies were hiring workers to have them on payroll, but we're not giving them 40 hours of work. They may give them 10 hours of work, 15 hours of work, 20 hours of work, but they satisfied the law because the law said they just had to be on the payroll. So we were able to come and look at that first source law and edit it. And for each job on the construction site, we had put numbers to it for working hours instead of hirees, and so that changed the game. And so even now, folks are being benefited for these blue collar jobs because payroll has to show working hours and not just hirees. Now, how does that affect the African American community? How does that affect returning citizens? We don't currently have a white blue collar class in D.C., right? The only blue collar workers that are white here in D.C. are working as firefighters or police officers, and I have my thoughts on that. It's more so to pat themselves on the back like I'm doing something good, helping these black folk. But when you look at construction, when you look at bus drivers, when you look at mail men, we don't have a white blue collar worker in the city. And so these jobs that are requiring now for working hours are going directly to returning citizens in our city.
That's wow. I mean, talk about another inroad and an opportunity that just came out of um, a mustard seed. Someone planted a seed of advocacy in the life of a reentry story that might have started out sad, but there's so many wonderful things that we've heard in this particular type of advocacy around employment opportunities. So you talked about pre-COVID, and I wanted to ask, like, so now post-COVID, reconciling these relationships, building pathways to employment. Are we still where we were actually at? Are we still in this maze? Or are people in our community starting to pay attention to this talent pool and think about the viability that we have here to employment? Or are we still at the point of stigma, the proclivity to other someone because they're just as impacted individual, they're a returning citizen?
So I think, and I may be wrong, let me preface this, but I think it's gotten worse. I think we are on the backlash of being punished for an Obama presidency. And so any strides that were made now are there's an attempt to push and roll back strides that were made towards African Americans, towards those who some feel don't deserve another chance. Of course, as a clergy, I believe in not just a second chance. I believe in another chance and another chance and another chance. Let me just tell you who I am. I went to Eastern Senior High School. I went to Jefferson Junior High School.
Can I say I went to Jefferson Junior High
All
School?
right, okay, all right. So
That's hilarious.
So my principal
Come
was
on, Trojans.
That's right. That's right. My principal was Miss Vera White.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were younger than me.
No, Miss Brown, and Miss Holmes.
That's right.
I could. No,
Mr.
I'm not gonna go there. But go. Yeah. Oh, Mr. T. Design. Oh my. We gotta talk. We gotta talk. Yeah.
So Miss Vera White did not give me my junior high school diploma until I walked across the stage and everything. But she said, I'm not releasing your diploma until you write me an essay. And I believe it was a 10-page, but I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. But write me an essay on what you plan to do with your life. And guess what? My parents didn't say a word. I had to write that essay during the summer and then turn it into her. Now, I had graduated, did the work, but she didn't think I was ready. When I graduated, or when I was on my way to graduate from Eastern, I went into my counselor suite, and I said, I'm here to apply for college. The counselor told me, George, just turn around. You ain't nothing but a street boy. And so now I look back and say folks gave up on me, right? They didn't see what my future was. Now, I'm never going to tell you I was this thug, I was this wreak havoc on the community. I've never done prison time. However, what I am saying is folk, they had a determination of who I was and who I would become, right? They were just tired of me. And so I think now folks are determining who's good, who's bad, who will be successful, who won't be. I just came in today listening to Trump's press conference, saying that he was taking over Washington, D.C., taking over the police department, and going to bring order to our city. And what does that mean? That means that he has predetermined who is good for our city and who's bad for our city. He has predetermined that crime will be tough and that folks will basically be thrown away and thrown to jail. What does that mean for our young people? He has predetermined that if our young people are misdirected right now, that they will be handled in a way that they won't have a second chance, and whatever stigma that will be placed on them will be placed on them for the rest of their life. And so, what we try to do is, first of all, and don't get me wrong, there are some that aren't ready for the freedom that we have in this country. However, I think there's a long road to determine who doesn't deserve that.
I'm just, the bringing in your storytelling and then pulling your own lived experience in, about a certain time in middle school where you were given some discipline, or I would say tough love. Because when I think of tough love and what you said about Miss White, is an example of exactly what that term means in context, right? And a lot of times I think before we become more reactionary to harm in our community, we've missed those moments where it could be a school principal, it could have been a mentor who could have been something to a person, a young person, that had a life lasting impact, as we just heard in you retelling that story, to maybe shift the narrative of the school to prison pipeline.
Right.
So that is very, very underrepresented in a minority community like we have here. So you got actually support. And so that's a beautiful thing. I wanted to talk about now, because we kind of like painted this picture of what work we still have to do, right? So there's still work to be done. It's hard work. And I like a part of your storytelling doesn't run from that, because I think a lot of times we do feel that social services, wraparound services, handouts are the way, but we can't just move and groove like that, so to speak. We have to be thinking long-term, longitudinally, how we're going to arrest some of the problems within, minority communities, especially when the system is making it harder for them to escape that reality of getting involved in the legal system in the first place. So with that being said, where do we go from here, and what can we do to make sure that our brothers and sisters who are either behind bars or who are in the thick of it, even to this day, who someone's coming home, right? Where do we begin to love on them the way that we know that we can as a community, to say, let's start building those authentic relationships. Let's make it more welcoming. Let's make it more inviting, because we can't just always say that it's the system and the barrier. We, as like myself, justice impacted individuals, have a huge role to play in this fight.
So there's one word that I think every parent, every school, every community, every preacher has to teach our people, not just children, but our people, and that's just dignity. Let's just start there. If we define what dignity looks like for Black America, then it holds us accountable for a certain lifestyle, which means we won't start to see young ladies with bonnets on in the street. We won't see young men with pajamas on in the street. We won't see people unbathed come out the house. There is a certain self-respect that comes with just having dignity. It starts there. There's certain things that you just won't do when you have dignity. And I think that when we talk about the blame game, we first have to look in the mirror. The Bible says you don't If you don't work, you don't eat. And so one of the things we talk about with returning citizens is, what do you do when you first get your paycheck? Are you gonna show up on Monday? Or you gonna drink all week, you gonna party all week, you gonna smoke a little weed, you gonna buy a little sex? What are you gonna do? And that's a real conversation with a certain population of men and women who are returning and getting their first job. Right? What are you gonna do when the boss gets on your nerve? Boss may use a curse word. The boss you may feel like he's picking on you. What are you going to do? Are you going to think about that daughter that you have who needs a father who has some money helping? You're going to think about, I'm a man and ain't nobody going to talk to me like that. I put on my pants just like you put on. There are, we like to say we are going through, they're doing too much. But when we look at the context of our community, we aren't going through what slaves went through. We aren't going through what Jim Crow went through. We aren't going through what the marchers went through. And so I don't allow for excuses. What's more important to you? Other part of that is, nowhere in my teachings do I see that our hands should be out. Now, I understand you may need subsidy, right? But that subsidy should be temporary subsidy. And so you should have a plan. What's your 6-month plan? Maybe you should move. I moved. I was going through a divorce, and I'm being very transparent right now. I called my sister. I said, hey, can I come move in your basement? Before that, I moved to Waldorf for 6 months into an efficiency apartment where I just paid $800 a month and I didn't even realize that they didn't have a metro down there. My car got repossessed. And so now I'm all the way in Waldorf with no metro to get back into the city, but I was able to take that $800 rent and save money. Moved in with my sister. She only charged me $500. I humbled myself until I could figure it out. And so what is a 6-month plan for you? What do you want to do in 6 months so that you won't be in the same state that you're in now? And then what do you want to be in a year? And how do we get you there? How do we work out a plan? That may mean you get paid and you only have $50 of fun that you can do. That may mean you can't wear the Pradas or you can't wear the Versace or you can't wear the Gucci, but in a year you should be able to. And so we have to have those tough questions. And going back to the word dignity, dignity says that I'm not going to live off the government.
Thank you. So it's about that time we gonna land this plane, but can we? No diggity, no doubt, right? We gonna say that. And I thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for coming in and doing what you did and holding space for a vulnerable community that needs to be loved on. So here at the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens, I'm your host, Mr. Sellers, and we are investing in people, not prisons. Stay tuned and have a wonderful day. Bye.